Catherine, you have been a phenomenal chair, and the board and staff would like to present you with 2 tokens of appreciation. Can the commission come forward to the front with all of us? Presented to Catherine M. Walder, the best chairperson ever at the Port of Palm Beach. Chairwoman of the board, in recognition of your dedicated service and leadership, 2019. From all of us.
Thank you very much, I appreciate it. One good picture? One,
It's good to see you again, by the way.
Colleen Waters. Chair Captain Walden. Here. Vice Chair William Richard.
Here.
Secretary Treasurer Joseph Anderson.
Present.
Commissioner Blair Stickland. Commissioner Jean Wright. Executive Director Manuel Amia.
I'm here.
Court Counsel Greg Fish.
Here.
We have
United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We will not be having an executive session today. And we will have the election of officers. So, does somebody want to make a motion?
I motion that we make Wayne Richards to be chair.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Do I hang up now or? I just want to, I'm going to say one thing. That is, he's already parked in this space. And he has a new gavel. So.
No, you should.
I was on to
This is a presentation.
Whatever you want. Good. Yes, hi. That's
I would like to make a nomination for vice chair, which is Commissioner Joseph T. Anderson.
Second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Madam Chair, Mr. Richard Swanson.
Yeah, Madam Chair. I nominate Blair Sickland as the Secretary Treasurer.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Can we remember the same scene for this evening? Oh, gosh. We're not moving. All right. All right. Excluding me from I look forward to working with the new officers and the board. Congratulations, Joe. Congratulations. Thank you, Gene. Thank you. Let's discuss committee appointments for 2020. We have 3: the City of Riviera Beach Liaison, the TPA, formerly known as the MPO, and the Business Development Board. Do any of my colleagues wish to serve in either of those 3 positions?
I would like to do the BDD, if that's okay for everyone.
It is done. Joe, what are you going to take, sir?
I would defer, but if no one will accept, I'll take on the transportation planning.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Mr. Anderson. Madam Jean Enright, Commissioner Enright, we can use your your expertise?
I will go on and take the Riviera Beach, liaison there, provided that, I get a backup if the night's gonna be long. I can have a backup to take the.
City manager just said the meeting's gonna be short from that, this
Oh,
point
it will be.
forward. He said you'll be fine. But the,
It'll work, okay?
okay, is that okay?
Just promise me short meetings, that's all, okay?
All right, thank you. So we have our appointments.
May I have you request the commissioners to bring up their mics? We can barely hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. So Commissioner Enright will be the liaison with the city of Riviera Beach. Commissioner Anderson will be on the TPA, and Catherine Walden, Commissioner Walden will be on the business development board. Thank you very much for your service.
But, Madam Chair, I definitely need excuse me. Mr. Chair, I have to get acclimated. Mr. Chair, we definitely need a alternate for the TPA.
I can do that if you want.
Unless, Blair, do you wish to be on to do it?
I have my meetings on Thursdays, so that's not.
Okay,
that's why
well-
that's why I got off years ago.
Thank you. So, thank you, Commissioner Walden. All right, we have, thank you. Mr. Almira, any additions, deletions, or reorgs of the agenda?
Yes. Commissioners, we would like to add M7 as a condition. And we would like to pull M2, bring back in February, as well as M4. We'd also like to bring it back in February.
So M4 and M2 are deferred to February. You're adding M7, and what is M7?
M7, commissioners, is the JPA's MDOT for $1.5 million that we'd like to get for its approval.
Yes. Okay, very good. Is there a motion to modify the agenda as stated?
Consent agenda, I don't see where that, should be Holy Ground, should be a part of.
Commissioner Enright, we're gonna wait.
I'm sorry, Commissioner. In J8, Holy Ground should be there, and I don't see the name of Holy Ground organization.
In what amount, Commissioner Enright?
$500 donation, it was Holy Ground Commission.
Motion has to be brought back for ratification in February.
In February. May I ask a question? We are giving money, it's my understanding, from our community grant. Long as the board receives it prior to the meeting, even if it's at the meeting, I understand that you voted on, then we could address that because it's community grants. It's not that I'm asking other commissioners to add to it. So my understanding is that if she received it like she received it Monday, it would be okay. It was a community grant, it could be approved at this meeting, we're in attendance to.
If I
We go
may.
back.
So,
That's
Commissioner
my
Enright,
understanding.
I think, maybe you're wrong, I think the preferred practice is that they go through the staff and they're vetted for all the qualifications and events.
They're already there.
But sometimes we do add things, and we approve it subject to that later verification. Are you saying they have been fully vetted and cleared by staff?
Yes, because his organization, we've given them monies before, their deputy forms are in already. Am I correct in the back? Everything is already here.
Well, let's add it to the agenda, that's what you want, and we'll approve it subject to final verification. We'll get you what you want.
Certainly, February.
No, this meeting.
So that was my understanding, if we had an organization that where all the papers were in, the staff is there, the deputy, all the forms were in, it was approved, and it was community grants, and the commissioner could just add it, as long as it was received by the meeting day. Now, if you go back, I'm pretty sure that's right. Now, the reason why we didn't do the MLK, because it was different. The commission had to be asked if we wanted to chip in monies, because it was over the allotted monies that one commissioner could give to that organization. So that was totally
Are we
different.
able to move forward on this matter?
Yes, we are, and just to, put it on the table, that we actually received the information on Tuesday, later part of Tuesday, so we went through the entire process of contacting them to verify that all documentations were in-house.
So I'm going to say that we put this on the agenda, and if it passes, it's pending final, but we can approve it today for you.
But, that means we're going to remove J8 from the consent agenda, correct? because I wanted to add a contribution if I did not for West Riviera. West Riviera.
Okay, we can actually add those under F, additional
Correct.
solutions to zero emission.
Okay.
So you want to add those two items?
So we're adding
Yeah.
those up your item.
Well, I just, 'cause-
Yours was added, Commissioner.
oh, the $100 was already?
The 100 was
Okay.
already added.
All right, I'm on that.
So we'll add the one for Commissioner Enright.
Okay, so whoever makes a motion, please make the motion to approve the consent of the modified J.
Mr. Chair, I move that.
Oh, we weren't there yet. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. When we get there, I believe we are.
We're still on F.
Anything else on F, Ms. Elder?
No.
Do we need a motion to approve the modified?
Yes.
I'll make a motion to approve modified as stated.
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by yes.
Yes.
Aye.
Yes.
Opposed? None motion carries unanimously. Item G, please.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
A motion has been made to approve the agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion does carry unanimously. Thank you. So mirror presentations and tonight?
We do not have a presentation, but we do have an announcement, and that is a good friend of all of us, Sam Mosher, sends his regards, hoping that everybody's doing well. And that's it,
Okay, where will you do the MLK presentation?
under my
Okay. I've been informed we have not approved the agenda.
We have not approved the minutes, approval of the minutes.
I just made the agenda minutes. I would like to make a motion to help you out.
Is there a second?
I will second that.
Thank you. Any readers? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay, we're now back to I. Nothing on I, Ms. O'Meara?
I've already mentioned it.
Thank you. We'll go to the consent agenda.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the consent agenda with the changes to J8 that we discussed earlier with the West Riviera and the whole ground.
Holy Ground seemed fire. Thank you.
Second?
A motion has been made to approve the modified consent agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion does carry unanimously. We're on to district reports, Mr. Elmer.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioners. We'll start with an update on the Christie Grant. In my most recent communication with the Department of Transportation in Washington, I was informed that the awards will be announced in late February 2020. A reminder that our request is for $1.2 million. This will be for phase 2 of our rail expansion project. Moving on, and I know that he's in our audience. The Sugar Co-op in Belvades, Mr. Mike Zally coordinated a visit for Carl Baker, Yaremi Farinas, and I to tour the Sugar Cane Growers Cooperative of the Florida Mill on January the 7th. The mill operates 24 hours a day. We were shown a full process from grinding sugarcane to the final production of sugar crystals and molasses. Ironically, while we were there, we witnessed a truck driver who would be transporting molasses that same day to us here at the Port Palm Beach. But I'd like you to take a peek at a sort of a sneak preview of what we can expect in the month of February as far as the tenant highlight that Carl and Yaremi are working on. So it'll take 2 seconds, or at least 20 seconds. Once it's queued and ready to go. this past Saturday, as we know, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. parade was held on Saturday, January 18th in Revere Beach. The theme this year was Building a Bridge to Harmony. Commissioners Anderson, Enright, and Richards participated in the festivities by cruising on the hand-built float designed by our maintenance department. I don't know if you can maybe have a picture of it. There it is. Look at it. I would like to congratulate our maintenance group for their dedication and above all their craftsmanship. They really did a phenomenal job on that. We will like to now present a short tribute. At this point, I would like to pass it over to the new chair. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Mr.
Well,
Richards.
thank you. We're celebrating Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday, and I thought it'd be appropriate that we look back at the historical legacy. That's right. So staff was kind enough to piecemeal put together this presentation. I'm actually seeing the final product for the first time, so thank you, Remy. Thank you, Carl.
5 minutes.
Please. Can you do the lines?
Martin Luther King Jr. came to Birmingham, Alabama in 1963 on a mission to a place he called the most segregated city in the United States.
To traumatize this blatant injustice and to demand that the federal government must put a cent in this city unless it decides to face the realities of desegregation.
In the nonviolent demonstrations that followed, King and hundreds of protesters were arrested. They were pressing the city to eliminate laws that sought to keep blacks and whites separated in schools, restaurants, and many other public places. Historian Robert Corley says King and the local civil rights leaders needed this strategy to succeed.
There had been no movement whatsoever in the city toward any form of desegregation of any of its institutions. And so King was saying, if we can win in Birmingham, if we can come to Birmingham and prevail, then we can win anywhere.
King and his followers were met with fierce resistance from the police. Public Safety Commissioner Eugene Bull Connor, backed by the majority of white residents, was determined to stop the demonstrations. Without enough volunteers to continue the protests, King and other leaders enlisted hundreds of young school children to keep the marches going and fill up the jails.
The young African-American student protesters would gather here on the steps of the 16th Street Baptist Church and hear inspirational speeches from civil rights leaders like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. They would then file from the church and walk across the street to a park where they were determined to demonstrate peacefully for equal rights.
I was arrested after we got about a block away from the church in this area.
Janice Kelsey was 16 years old when she and her schoolmates were jailed.
My mind was made up. I was going to participate. I was going to go to jail. I wanted to get my freedom.
Then on the second day of the student demonstrations, things turned violent. Police turned high-pressure fire hoses on the young people and set attack dogs on them.
That one day, this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. That one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will they be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day, down in Alabama, with its vicious races, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification. One day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted. Every hill and mountain shall be made low, the rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is the faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discourse of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day.
There you have it.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay. I think it's important that we reflect on the meeting. We'll move to Ryan, you get the next. Did you just? Oh, are you still?
I'm still.
Okay.
It's all right. On January 27th will be the National Maintenance Appreciation Day. The port will provide our dedicated team with Meat Lovers Pizza. That happens to be their favorite. By the way, I'm sure everyone has seen the remodel of our front reception area, which is being renovated by our talented and skilled maintenance department. Thanks to all 12 of them, they all do a great job. All right, then moving on for schedule of events. This coming Tuesday, January the 28th, we have our tenant coffee once a quarter. It'll start at 9 or 10? 9 o'clock, 9 in the morning. And then a whole series of events that are coming during the end of the month as well as towards the beginning of next month. I will be participating in the Springboard meeting in the Legislative Forum up in Tallahassee. That would be for February 5th, the 6th, and I'll travel the 4th and the 7th. In order to save a couple of dollars, I'll be driving up there. So, Commissioners, if there are any questions, I'll be more than glad to attempt.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. As the Port Director gave you some insight into, we're happy to say that Bergbold Reconstruction is open for business. We brought that to substantial completion on January 6th. There'll be a wrap-up of final changes and requests for a balancing change order coming to you next month. The berth has been turned over to Berth 1 Palm Beach as of 12 a.m. January 8th. Final punch list items will be completed by Johnson Brothers, and as the Port Director mentioned, Johnson Brothers was an extremely cooperative contractor. We thank them for their cooperation. They provided us with a very high-quality project. Moving on to the MOB demolition contract. The MOB demolition contract FPO relocations have finally been completed, and paving is being performed literally as we speak. Should be finished by the end of the day today, if not already. We'll be going through a walkthrough for substantial completion tomorrow. I will take this time also to compliment West Construction on the quality of their work and their cooperation during this project, especially during the delays that they had to stand by waiting for FPL. There are 2 agenda items that we'll address, 2 additional items on this project that come up later. I was lucky last January, or a couple weeks ago, to attend the National Association of Black Women in Construction and make a presentation on contracting opportunities at ports, along with our sister ports, Port Miami, Port Palm Beach. We provided a presentation on the existing and future projects at the Port of Palm Beach. We noted in that presentation our excellent minority participation representation, especially in the CCNA project, showing slides noting representation by E.C. Fennell and the 34% minority participation by Kinley Horn on the Berth 1 reconstruction project design and construction monitoring. Port Channel dredging. Last week, the Port of Palm Beach received formal certification of the completion of channel dredging from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. The Port Engineers and Operations Department will continue to monitor weather and possible shoaling during the winter season, which we know we've had problems with. Further, the Port Engineer and the Port Planning Director, we intend to go up to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers in February to discuss ongoing dredging issues. The Port was advised last week that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers will be initiating a sand tracing study in an attempt to gain more information on the sand transport which results in the Port Channel shoaling. Specifically, they'll be looking at leaking of the South Jetty and its role in that shoaling. Further, Port Engineer myself will be attending the Florida Shores and Beaches Preservation Association Conference in February in Sarasota. Several presentations are being given on this at this technical conference, which specifically are directed towards the shoaling issues along this coast and the Port of Palm Beach. I've scheduled personal meetings with several consulting firms known for their understanding of sand transport issues at the port and in this area to discuss ideas towards resolution or mitigation of the shoaling issues that have plagued the port for years. If there's any questions, I'll be glad to take them.
I just want to thank staff for participating in the National Association of Black Women in Construction. I received rave reviews and also they thank you as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else?
Has there been any shoaling over the weather that we had the last couple of weeks? Pilots do any testing?
We have no specific information, but I can tell you that the port director, my tongue, and myself, our stomachs turn as we look out the window over the last couple of days and see the wave breaks on the North Jetty. We had seas offshore on one of the buoys registering 19 feet, and I see some changes in the wave break inside of the North Jetty. We'll be looking at that closely very soon. Of course, we expect shoaling is going on. The settling basin out there was supposed to have been dredged this year. It wasn't. They didn't have funding. They will be dredging it next year. There's over 200,000 cubic yards of sand sitting in the settling basin, so I'm certain that's been flowing into the channel. Quite honestly, we know it's happening.
So they didn't have the money to take that out?
It was scheduled to be taken out according to notes that I read from when Jose and Carl went up last year, but it didn't happen. The cutter head dredge wasn't available and funding wasn't available. They will be bringing in, they've assured me they'll be bringing in the cutter head dredge next year to first evacuate the settling basin, the 200,000 yards, and to clear any shoaling in our channel. So the town of Palm Beach is going to begin to big hit the sand over there with your station line. Thank you.
Congratulations, Mr. Chairman. And Rick Kapinski on behalf of the Port of Palm Beach. I did just get back from Tallahassee today. We're now finishing up week 2 of the session. Last week was the opening week. We had Palm Beach County Day, and Commissioner Gene Enright, Joe Anderson, and Catherine Walter all attended, and went around the Capitol and assignments, and I did go over our 2 priorities that I want to give you an update about. First is our port local bill, which is House Bill 673 rather, by Matt Wilhite. The bill is hitting a speed bump at the moment, and the staff needs to understand more about how we compare to other ports. And yes, it is the area in particular that addresses the salary and our own governance of future salary considerations. So I produced yesterday to staff and met with them and showed that of the deep water ports that we have in Florida, There's only 3 that have an elected commission, like ourselves, and those happen to be coincidentally the same 3 ports that live strictly off of user fees. We don't receive local tax dollars. Neither does Fernandina, neither does Canaveral. The other ports, the other 11 deep water ports, all receive and are part of local government budgets. So that was the first distinction that we pointed out. The second distinction was that of all 14 deep water ports, we are the only port that has to go to Tallahassee in order to have any salary adjustment made. And that is because in our charters it dictates that the legislature has to do that. And then the third distinction is of the 2 ports that are similar to us as elected bodies, they both receive more compensation than Port of Palm Beach commissioners. At 4:30 today, which I haven't looked, I was sitting there waiting for the 4:30 time slot, then we'll know if we are noticed for next week. If not, our last hope is the week after. After that, those subcommittees stop meeting. So we have chairman of the Palm Beach County delegation, Representative Roth, working with the chairman, Scott Plagan, to make sure the bill gets heard. We have Matt Wilhite working hard to do that, and we also now have Marilyn Magar helping us. So I'm confident still that we are going to get the bill heard and moving, but I did want to let you know that the staff is questioning where we compare to other ports before they put the bill on the agenda.
Please.
Here's the question I want to ask you. Could you tell us the compensation for the other 2 ports that are receiving funds by each year?
How did I know that was going to come up? So Fernandina, in their charter, they are capped according to the charter no more than $25,000 annually per commissioner. That's in addition to any health benefits and some limited travel. The budget, which I actually went online and pulled their budget, they are at $120,000, so they are literally $500 per commissioner under their cap rate. So they're about $24,500.
Plus the insurance and everything
Plus.
is additional.
Plus.
So they can receive the 25 plus additional monies. Now, do they pay their health insurance for them?
Yes, that's part of the budget.
That's-
And then Canaveral is $10,200. But again, pulling their budget, what Canaveral has is they actually have staff assigned to them. So while we have Director Almira and the entire staff, they actually have a separate commission staff and a rather healthy travel budget. So their budget just for commission operations is $350,000 annually.
May I ask you one other? What about their health insurance? Is that in addition to that?
That's all in that $350,000.
So in essence, their health insurance, like for us, we normally, for the $9,500, if we choose to receive it, we pay for it out of our pocket. So you're saying in addition to all of that, then their health insurance.
I don't know what their copay would be and how much
Right,
would it have,
I
but
see.
they have a healthier package. So we're hoping that information, plus that we're the only ones who will break that logjam. The next
Thank you
issue,
very much.
the next issue is our funding request for the Kennedy bunker. As you know, we have requested $1.2 million, which would help whoever the eventual leaseholder would be on Peanut Island. And we pulled out of all the Coast Guard station, all the other things have to get done. We pulled out the Kennedy bunker because that was the item that we felt was really of state interest and warranted no match that we could justify. This is a national monument really that needs to be restored. So that request has been submitted by Senator Powell and, as you know, by Representative Al Jaquette. Next week, next Friday, is sort of the end of the considerations amongst the committees and the staff of what will make it in the final budget recommendation for each respective chamber. So the push is on right now. So my request to the commission, to you all, is in the next 8 days is really the time to touch base again with Senator Powell. I know the 3 commissioners did last week, as well as with Representative Jaquette, to underscore the importance of Kennedy bunker. Now, Riviera Beach City Manager Jonathan Evans happens to be here at the moment. So I don't want to take away from anything in Riviera Beach, but I want to bring to your attention that Senator Powell has 44 requests, and that's covering Mangonia Park, Lake Park, West Palm Beach, Riviera Beach. So he's not going to get all 44 requests. So he will get a certain amount. We happen to be good because we're in a different silo than water projects like most people are. So he may get special consideration. Representative Jaquette has 19 requests in. And so he's probably only going to get 2 or 3. So Riviera Beach is going to be asking Representative Jaquette and Senator Powell to please take care of them. We're sort of going to be asking for Kennedy Bunker. So when you contact Representative Jaquette and Senator Powell, be aware that they have a lot of mouths to feed, and they're only going to get so many projects as a priority. I have the backup if you need talking points again for that. The last item is a new item that came up. All the ports, all the lobbyists, we meet every Monday around 2 o'clock. And you've heard me mention before at past meetings about the resiliency initiatives. The Ports Council believes they are going to get some pot of money this session, as much perhaps as $5 million. Ports that have a, and Director Almira knows all this already, I'm just repeating it for you all. So ports that have a shovel-ready project that would fall in the category of sea level rise or resiliency will be the ones that will be taken care of. The Ports Council is requesting those ports, like ours, that may have a project ready to go, to submit it as soon as possible. Because before this budget is put to bed, they want to be able to submit to the governor's office to say, here are the projects we have. We need 4 million, we need 7 million, whatever that number is. They asked me, I did not have the opportunity to check with Director Almira, but I did say I believe our outfall pipes probably need new baffles and possibly a new lift station, but I'm sure we're experiencing, particularly as our engineer just heard, sea level rise, king tides. We're going to have to do something to mitigate. So hopefully we'll get a project like that ready to go up to Tallahassee here also in the next week or so. So with that, one more, Director Almira, I drive back and forth every weekend, so that when you go up, I'm happy to give you a ride. Okay, good.
Any comments or questions for Mr. Pinsky? While we were up there, some of my colleagues, well actually both of our colleagues, we ran into Emily Schlossberg, and she's introducing a bill of HB 1219 with the electrical charging station. I know we're working with that P&L, but I didn't know if that related to just the apparatus for the initial install, or that actually pertained to maybe acquiring any vehicles. So maybe if you could probably just give us some information on that. It may not be germane to us at all, but we can just look into it just on the safe side.
So per bill, and there's a couple other bills also addressed to it. There are some local member projects, but there's the legislation would basically say so many public entities, and in our case the port, would be encouraged. It's not a mandate yet to install so many electric charging stations per whatever our size is, whatever we believe. So if her bill is enacted, then we would be required to plan for how we are going to accommodate an electric charging space at our cost. Now, FDOT, Florida Department of Transportation, in the meantime, is requesting money for more electric charging stations on the turnpike and the rest areas, and putting money in it. We've been told that should that happen, then public entities would be able to apply for that. I don't suspect that happen. I believe it will be an unfunded mandate that will be required. But so far, her bill has not gotten here.
Okay, thank you.
On the resiliency, the outflow pipes, you said the deadline's coming up soon, right? So are we planning to do anything?
We're working on that, yes.
So we will be applying for something.
Yeah, it may not be outfall, maybe whatever you can say you are shovel ready to do April 1 you get money, they want to know that you're going to spend it this year right away, or starting in July.
Thank you, Mr. Pensky, appreciate it. Any comments from commissioners or any reports? Anybody want to offer up a commissioner report? Commissioner Simpson?
Yes, I know some of you might be aware that I attend a lot of chamber after-hour type events, and the last few I've gone to, I spent most of the time handing out cruise brochures, and it's just amazing how many people have no idea that there's a cruise ship going out of the Port of Palm Beach. So I'm just hoping that Mardi Gras is coming up in the North Palm Chamber, and they usually get about 100,000 people to show up for this. So maybe we can just check with the cruise line, see if they have any interest in putting a little booth up or something, just to start passing things out. Because it's amazing how many local people really aren't that familiar with what the cruise line does. They don't know it's a 2-day cruise. They thought it was a gaming ship. So I'll continue to go to the chamber functions and pass the material out, but I think this would be a good thing if they would put a little booth in there. And I'm sure it wouldn't be that difficult to man it, and maybe pass out some brochures. And it's a good crowd, especially up in the North Palm area.
Staff just said they would follow up there.
Okay.
Yep. Anything else? Thank you. We'll move along. Home business. Peanut item. Sir.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Court staff, Mr. O'Meara, and myself have been and will continue to be in communications and meetings with City Manager Jonathan Evans. These communications are focusing on Peanut Island as well as other relevant topics concerning the port and the City of Revere Beach. Based on the update provided yesterday by Mr. Evans, I'd like to invite him up to provide you with an update on where the city stands at this time.
Welcome, Mr. Evans. Thank you.
Congratulations, Mr. Chair, members of the rest of the board. Thank you for the opportunity to address you concerning Peanut Island. I was able to provide the City Council with an update as it relates to the status on the relationship to move the project forward. As it stands right now, the city is still gearing up towards entering into an arrangement with the Port of Palm Beach. One of the things that we need to do to help facilitate the private sector involvement is, as a government entity, we have to go through a competitive solicitation process. We've had our city attorney take a look at what statutory requirements would tell us to do as it relates to engaging some involvement from our private sector partners. It's not something that if we enter into an arrangement with the Port of Palm Beach that we can effectively then work with our private sector partners. So we're going to have to go through a competitive solicitation process. What we will be doing at our first meeting in February to the City Council is providing basically an outline of the scope of responsibilities that we're looking for a vendor to assist us in the restoration and reconstruction of some of the facilities. We have already committed, and the council has already communicated its desires to move forward and pursue grant funding to assist in facilitating the construction costs. Now we've got to look at assistance from the private sector to effectively effectuate the improvements on the site. So twofold. One of the things that we're going to have to do is go through a competitive solicitation process. We are drafting the inner components of the document and the proposal that would be necessary. That would probably take about 30 days. What we would like to do as part of the selection committee is engage your staff to participate with us to make sure that the vision is aligned for effectively what happens on that site, because the property still will remain a property with the port. The City of Riviera Beach would be the entity that would be leasing the property. Our commitment is still to promote ecotourism, to look at modifying the ordinance with the county. We are also drafting corresponding language that we would look to have modified in the ordinance and provide the county with some information in advance of memorializing a relationship with our private sector partners. Because we know in order to do some of the things that are necessary, we're going to have the county alleviate some of the stipulations that are put before us as it relates to that property. We're also looking at research at all the other county properties that the county has as passive or active parks, and this is the only one that has strict stipulations such as the ones that we are asking to be modified. So we do think we have a good proposal, a good pitch to the county to modify the ordinance, but that seems to be the biggest sticking point. From staff standpoint, we can move forward with a competitive solicitation process, bring that to bear, and probably get a contract that both elected bodies can look at probably in the next, I would say, after the competitive solicitation process is done, if the attorneys can work together within 30 to 45 days, but we will have the shell of an agreement in place, and that's what we're working on as it stands right now.
Great question. In order for you to put a proposal on the street, you need to be able to indicate, here's what we're offering, here's what you can do. But it seems though that that's not finalized. How sure are you that you understand the parameters under which an operator can move forward? Which would then go into your RFP.
Right, the intent behind the RFP is for us to outline basically the current conditions and what is actually occurring on the site and the challenges that are associated with the site. Then we would put in there what the city's commitment is as it relates to bringing some resources to bear, and then engage the private sector to understand that it is really a lot of risk and risk mitigation, that if you're going to come to the table as a genuine partner with the city of Riviera Beach, understand that private sector resources or public sector resources, whichever entity chooses to partner with us, you're gonna have to bring that to bear. But the other side of it is, as conditions of making the improvements to those facilities, we would look at the opportunity for revenue elements associated with that if the ordinance is changed, whether it's, something that they can benefit if there's a museum on site, if they're able to host events and venues, or events and programs, that they would be able to monetize their capital investment so it makes sense. And that's the hard part as it relates to this particular endeavor, is that in order to engage the private sector, you're going to have some type of way that makes monetary sense to them. And from the city standpoint, we want to make sure that the community has access, that we are engaged in the process, and that it is truly an element that complements the recreation amenities here in Palm Beach County. We're also having a conversation next week with a firm that we've worked with, or that we're working with, to look at all our park facilities and how do we look to plan this in our master plan, and so it becomes a additional benefit to Palm Beach County, greater Palm Beach County. So that's kind of the phase of it. We want to be able to see what the private sector or the public sector would bring to bear as resources. We have had conversations with private sector entities. We have communicated the challenge and some of the opposition that we anticipate facing, and we've been very frank about those issues. So those that are interested in entertaining the phone calls from the city of Riviera Beach are acutely aware of what the risk situation is, and they are still interested in this particular property and this opportunity, because there's a lot of synergy that can be created associated with that. So I do believe that we will have entities respond, and I do believe that we will have entities bring resources to bear. And to speak frankly, I think our biggest opposition is going to be trying to modify that ordinance. I think we're going to have entities that want to participate in the restoration and reconstruction and improvements of that particular site.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Walden and Lindsay.
So a couple things. One is, from a business perspective, you're asking people to respond to an RFP, as you said, with basically a lot of risk and unknowns. So I have to imagine that's going to be very hard for them to figure out how they generate revenue and profit. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out. But more importantly, what kind of input will the port have on who you choose?
from our standpoint, we want this to be a relationship that is beneficial to both parties. And as it relates to the agreement or the firms that, or the entities that apply, we have no issues or no qualms about something that allows for staff to be involved, and it is a 50-50 partnership in effectively who is the entity that we select to work with as it relates to this, because what we believe that what's good for the city is good for the port. And so from our standpoint, if it is something that we work with your staff as far as the selection committee, because we were already going to incorporate them in the overall selection committee to ultimately assist us in making that, you know, decision as to who the entity we want to work with. We can be as inclusive as desired by the board, and I know that my elected officials would welcome that opportunity to work with your staff to bring this project to fruition.
So we'll be involved, but, you know, we can reject somebody you might choose, is that correct?
I wouldn't have any opposition of, you know, as part of the, you know, the voting process or the committee's process, if there's something that a majority of the folks, even on the staff side, say this is something that we're not comfortable with, you know.
We just went through a bad situation before, so. My last question is last time I asked you this, if you reached out to the town of Palm Beach and you engaged in a conversation?
I've had brief conversations with the deputy manager. I'm actually going to see him tomorrow. And then after my conversation with him tomorrow, I'm going to see if I can have some more substantive conversations with him. Obviously with the holidays and, you know, people's travel schedules, it's been very challenging to get everyone in the same space at the same time. But I will be seeing him tomorrow because we serve on the same committee. So I will make it a point to have that conversation and sit down with the town manager or the electeds to communicate ultimately what the end result is, at least the hope for our end result would be.
Thank you, Commissioner Sickman.
Yes, it seems to me that this whole Peanut Island subject has changed dramatically since the Maritime Museum had left. Most of us were here when the Maritime Museum was running it, and I think the majority of us, I know we have a new commissioner on now, but I think it was almost unanimous that once the Maritime Museum left, the port really wanted to get out of Peanut Island. We didn't want to really have too much to do with it because we're in the port business. We're not in the Peanut Island parks and recreation type of business. So that's why we were negotiating with the county, and we were basically going to turn it over to them. We were going to be done with it, had nothing to do. So now it's changed that we're looking for the private sector. Well, if we were looking for the private sector, we would have done that on our own and we wouldn't need Riviera Beach. So that was never even an option a year ago, right after the Maritime Museum lease wasn't renewed. So now we're talking about private sector and port's gonna lease it, and that was never I think the plan. That's my understanding. So you know, how this has turned around now, and now we're gonna be a partner with the city, and they're gonna go out and get someone to do this. That's changed 100% since we threw out the Maritime Museum. So I know a majority of us that are on the commission today were basically saying, let's just get someone in here. And there was a time when if the county was gonna take it over, we weren't thinking about even just boarding it up, knocking it down, because we're not in the business of running a park with weddings and things like that. And I'm pretty sure that the majority of county commissioners really are not going to change the recreation and conservation that it's zoned for. So I think before we start doing RFPs for the private sector, I think the Port Commission needs to, you know, go over this whole new scenario that the private sector now all of a sudden it's going to be like the Maritime Museum coming back. So that's a big worry for me. And I think before we keep on going in this direction, we need to get some clarification from the commission and our staff.
Well, I'm going to jump in for a moment.
So, Commissioner Sickland, I do agree that Portland does not, the majority of this commission does not want to be in the Parks and Rec business. That's why we said we want to go on and have someone else take it over. I do not want to micromanage the city. Quite frankly, I don't think we should be involved in the selection process. Our goal is to hand it over to another entity. Our goal is not to decide, I think, our goal is not to decide who you choose. And we did not dictate the means and methods for you moving forward, and I won't do that today. I will say though, I'm hopeful this is not a 12 to 24 month process. So that's the goal here, is to get it done sooner than later. But I don't wish to tie your hands and tell you how to do it. And once you do it, I don't want to be involved in who you choose. Go do it.
Well, I would like to disagree with that, because we're the court.
I'll come back to your promise.
I'm in agreement with Commissioner Richards, because it was just like the same for the Maritime Museum. If we talk about the county, we were just gonna give it to them, so we can get it into the city of Riviera Beach. The only thing I would like to say is the part that I think that we should participate in, the modifications of the ordinance, okay? I would like you, I guess, the city to go on and identify them, put these be done, because there are other parts in the county who are doing, like you said before, those things, why we cannot do it over here. I mean, it's like catch 222. You can do it elsewhere, but you can't do it in Riviera Beach. That's wrong. The second thing is that when that ordinance was passed years and years and years ago, there were different county commissioners that was on that commission. And when it was passed, I think it only made about one vote. So they were kind of split, because several of them called me and said, you know, and that was done years ago, they didn't agree. Even Burke Aronson said, hey, that was not right. So at the end of the day, there are new people, and if you contact the current county commissioners, they're not gonna have that thought mind. We're in 2020. There's a different day, a new day. So I would like for you and the city, as soon as you can, start identifying them to get it to the county, and we need to, as commissioners, sign on. And I'm with Commissioner Richards in that respect, so do what you have to do. But, you know, but we can help you as far as the argument, because when you come up with something and you can mirror what? Parker O'Connor, the one down south, they have all these things going on, why we can't get them here? And then we would be in agreement, it's our property, we should be able to say, hey, we agree with those ordinances that the city's saying, or present it to the county ASAP, so then you can get it out on the street to whoever wanna help you out. We need to, the ordinance modify that ASAP. That's what I would like to see to help.
And Commissioner, to your point earlier, certainly we do not want this to be a longer process. We know that the deadline that was set is February, and certainly we would look to at least ask for another 90-day extension for the purposes of going through a competitive solicitation process and working with the selection committee to effectively select somebody to partner with and then bring back the components associated with the agreement. And this is the reason why we're looking to go through the competitive solicitation process. One, it erases any ambiguity of how the city of Riviera Beach came to select a particular private sector entity that is willing to work with us, because we have one right now that's willing to work with us. But we wanted to go through a transparent process and to allow anyone and everyone to compete in the process. The second element associated with it is we know that if the private sector comes aboard, that they bring some resources to bear, and we want to put together a proposal and visuals that when we go before the county and we show them what we can do to this particular facility and facilities to bring it back to life, that they would conceivably have to walk away from knowing that you have a government entity, you have the private sector, and you have our partner, the port, just merely from the standpoint it is your land, that is committed to bringing a piece of history back to life that has been neglected. Many parties have had the same opportunities to do what we as the city of Riviera Beach are trying to do. For whatever reason, they've decided not to participate. We are looking to not create a problem, we're looking to solve a problem, but we know that it is such an important element to the way of life here in Palm Beach, and it is heartbreaking that if we don't move, conceivably, you can see 10 years go by where a child
never gets the opportunity to access a piece of American history. And I think that's incumbent upon each and every one of us to work together to bring that to fruition. So we just want the opportunity to do it. My elected officials want to see that happen. I know the community wants to see it happen. And I can assure you, once we go through this process, the community will bring its resources to bear, and we will talk with all the commissioners in advance. We will go before the board and make a compelling argument as to why we think that these restrictions should be modified, even to the point where we're okay with not having a situation where no amplified sound and those types of things. But to see it in its existing condition is not helping in solving anyone. So we really want to bring something, and the intent by having your staff involved in it is because it's a genuine partnership, and we've got a lot of other things that we need to work on, the city and the port, and I think this is something that we all want to be there because it means something to each and every one of us, and I think having your staff work with us just makes it show that it is in fact a partnership, and it keeps you all attuned to what's going on.
We have indicated the staff some final comments.
I just have,
Commissioner Anderson and Commissioner
just out of our curiosity, I don't know if staff has this readily available, but how long did the Maritime Museum, what was the duration or the length of their contract?
30 months.
30? Somebody said 20, I think it's 20, but
20? And
30.
It was a long
and once the conclusion of that agreement in which we parted ways, how long did the land stay vacant and barren? No, I'm just asking.
Well, still is.
2 years? 2 years.
So we're looking at approximately, in my opinion, 22 years. Well, 32. 32 years. And we're asking the city of Riviera Beach to automatically walk on water and get to the finish line in 100 and something days. Now, I don't know about you, but I think that's it's disingenuous to see and to at least they've formulated a very good plan and they're moving in the right direction. And myself, I would like to see it play out because we waited 32 years and I don't see or ever heard of anybody looking at a land swap, and I don't know too many individuals that are giving up waterfront property. That's just me. But I would like to see at least give them the wherewithal and the latitude to move forward and to exhaust all efforts before we start, making a knee-jerk reaction. And I took it as they're, want us at the table, and I think should be more of an asset than a hindrance. And I look forward to seeing this come to fruition as well as play out, and also being an advocate when and where we need to go to the county to ask for a modification.
Commissioner Sickler, final comment?
Yeah, I would just say that, like I say, this has changed dramatically, and I'm very concerned that the port's going to stay tied to Peanut Island and the bunker. And one of our biggest problems when the Maritime Museum was there, we were always worried that there'd be huge lawsuits and things like that. So, I mean, the commission now is going back and saying, yeah, we can still be a partner in this and we'll lease it out to the city. I think the Port Commission needs to make sure this is what we want to do and stay on the, as the owners of this. So it's changed dramatically since the Maritime Museum has left. And like I say, I think the first thing they should do is go to the county and see what the chances are of actually changing the zoning and things like that before they start going out for RFPs. I think that's kind of ridiculous, but it's just one commissioner.
All right, so we're going to wrap this up. Thank you. I heard that there's a February deadline. Is it correct, Mr. Elmira?
That is correct.
So please put this on the February agenda for further discussion, consideration, and it will be helpful to me and my colleagues, I would think, if we can actually see a timeline to success. Because if I'm being asked to vote to extend something, we need to see the plan. Thank you for coming. We appreciate it.
No problem. I will work with your staff to provide the supplemental backup information for the February meeting. I'll be here to present that.
Thank you very much. go to item L2, windows resealing.
Yes, Commissioners, item L2 is for the windows sealing for the south elevation of the MOC, a proposal from Foster Construction Group. Foster has provided 2 previous sealing projects to the Maritime Office Complex, and all work has been of the highest quality and craftsmanship. Staff proposes to add this additional work to maintain continuity of services and single point responsibility for any future water leaks in the MOC that could develop for this in previous repaired areas. I have solicited quotes from 3 additional waterproofing and caulking contractors, and they had no interest in getting involved, probably due to the logistics of working above the 6th floor.
So moved, Foster Construction.
Second.
Thank you. Motion been made and properly seconded. Any other readings or questions?
I just want to commend you on, my biggest, pet peeve was making sure that the procurement policy was followed, as well as making sure we had, just wanted, and I spoke with the director, if we can just add to the backup any correspondence of the neglect or not willingness to proceed or to entertain the bid. That way, the transparency and we're above board. But thank you.
I can just say I have the names of this contractor.
Thank you.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Item L3. new
Item L3 is for the new passenger loading bridge, a work order for EC Fennell. In the background, EC Fennell has worked with the Port Engineer to develop a procedure for bidding of a performance specification for the proposed new passenger loading bridge. We reviewed specifications and procedures used by sister ports who have collectively bid a half a dozen loading bridges in recent months. The specification to be developed under this work order will allow the consultant to have a detailed design considerations to be developed by the passenger loading bridge manufacturers to both utilize their expertise in these systems while having consultants control over the architectural and structural aspects of the project. This procedure will allow for full and open competition to provide for the best pricing for Palm Beach. While the question has come up on the previous $52,000 that was spent for conceptual presentations to the board, it's important to note the $52K wasn't wasted. The major change by myself from that conceptual design is simply moving the horizontal tunnel closer to the terminal. This allows us to have a longer area for slope, which increases the vertical range of this bridge from 4 feet in the original concept to over 12 feet. Also, this proposal, our proposed design, would allow for moving that horizontal bridge, across the horizontal component up to 120 feet range across, up and down the dock, compared to the original design, which had it basically locked in one place. The original proposal for this phase of work with the original conceptual design, this phase was proposed at $250,837. So we're actually realizing a savings of $23,000 based on this current proposal. Please understand, this is the design phase only. Upon bidding, we will be coming back to you for services during construction, a work order that is estimated at this time to be upwards of $100,000 based on previous estimates, based on the original concept. This estimate does not include the cost of the passenger loading bridge, estimated to be between $1.5 and $2 million.
Commissioners, questions, comments?
So this is just to get the proposal out the door, right?
That's correct.
So what's the grand total gonna be to get it out the door, about $300,000-400,000?
This proposal is, this phase 2 is $227,400. The next step, which would be services during construction, would be upwards of $100,000. And then, of course, the passenger loading bridge right now we estimate to be between $1.5 and $2 million.
So does that seem like the right amount for this? It doesn't seem high.
To be honest, my ability to negotiate this contract is limited based on the procedure that I was handed. Effectively, I've been directed by the commission to deal with one consultant. If we were following the
That's not the question.
Yes, sir.
The question is $227,000 reasonable?
Well, it's more than that, though.
Well, the $100,000.
Now, I'm asking him what your.
I believe that other ports have done this phase in the neighborhood of $75,000 to $100,000 from discussions I've had with other ports and other consultants.
So that seems really high. So why the high amount in your opinion?
Honestly, part of the problem is that EC Fennell does not have experience in passenger loading bridges. Consultants that regularly do this, and I would welcome General Parrott to come up and speak if you'd like to. Other consultants out there that do this on a regular basis can have this specification out on the street, again, for between $75,000 and $100,000. There are some specifics to this that are peculiar to our port, but remember, we're trying to have a passenger loading bridge that will work for other ships in the future should something change with our ships. Another option that I can offer to you is if you'd like me to reevaluate the need, as well as look at the repairs necessary to bring our bridge up to snuff and make it more safe, I could do that and come back to you in February.
Let me stop you for a moment.
Yes.
So, and Blair always asks, normally Blair asks the same question. Blair says, Casey, are saying 200, is that the right number? I've read that 100 times. And maybe Casey's not the right person. I don't know. I don't think Blair would ask that. But you're our port engineer. So the question is, and I think you answered it, Will Suarez, is 227,000 reasonable? I heard you say no, 75 to 100. Well, that's a problem. No one here can, if what you're saying is accurate, I can't vote for that. So the question is, did you work up the 227,000 with them, or that's their number and you get the vote?
That's their number. I'm not comfortable with the number, sir. I think you can recognize that by my presentation.
Commissioner Emery.
Mr. Chair, I guess my question is, you said something very interesting. You said that because of the kind of design we have, they're doing a different kind of design. There are many different designs that we can do, but the kind of design that was selected is one that we can use on multiple different kinds of ships. Would that make the difference in the price rather than, and you also said that we can do a design for this for less money. So am I assuming that because this design is so different from regular designs, because we want to be able to use it, not just for these two ships, but for multiple ships in the future, is why the price is high? That's my question to you.
No, that I do not believe is the case. And actually, with the performance specification, we're passing on the majority of the design to the manufacturer to use their expertise. Different manufacturers use slightly different loading bridge designs. So the idea with going with a performance specification was to put it out to the manufacturers to design it. And quite honestly, that's why where I'm at with this recommendation.
Commissioner Simmons, and then Commissioner Anderson.
Maybe we can bring this back next month. There's no big rush. And maybe you could sit down with them and just say to some of the commissioners for a little bit.
I'm going to call Mr. Phil.
Yeah, just say there were some concerns, and maybe he can go step by step with you, and then you could come back to us next month and say this is how they came up with them.
Yes, sir, I certainly could do that.
It sounds as though we should defer this next month.
Mr. Chair, I agree with you, we should bring up EC Fennell, but also our attorney is suggesting that
there is an alternative. I'm not saying we should pursue it, but there is an alternative called a design build, where you go out under CCNA for a design build project, and then you have the manufacturers come in with their specs. My concern would be if you went out and had manufacturers prepare specs, and then the board goes out for those specs, that limits the ability of the person who prepared the specs to actually do the work. Whereas design build puts that all together and it doesn't cost anything to go out for design build contracts. Then the manufacturers are doing it themselves, and I'm sure you've had experience with design build.
Yes, and to clarify, this is very close to a design build. We would be using a performance specification that the other ports have been using, where we tell them the design parameters that we wish their bridge to operate under, and of course the codes would all be the same for everyone, and let them figure out the best way to design that bridge using their components and their standard designs and some patented procedures. So it is essentially a design.
I don't know that they would be able to bid on the work if they develop the specs and then we go out with those specs.
We would develop the performance specification, and this would be very close to the way that Canaveral, my good friend Bill Crow at Port Canaveral, just bid several of their loading bridges. It is a procedure that has been used in other ports also, Port Miami and Port Everglades.
All right, thank you. Mr. Mel, do you want to, you don't have to, do you want to speak now? We are going to defer this to next month, where you can work with staff, but if you want to speak now, you're more than welcome.
For the record, my name is Gerald Parrott.
I'm sorry.
Gerald. And yes, I would like to speak.
Please come forward.
Okay. But I just had, Mr. Chair, if I may, I want to ask, isn't this the second rendition or the second part? Because then we have an original design and then we actually modify based on your comments earlier?
Yes, Commissioner, and if we had kept that design exactly as it was, and we're not really changing it, we're just moving moving the horizontal component to give us more range. That original design would not meet our requirements during a high tide, king tides in an El Nino year where they're higher. So it had a very restricted range of motion. However, as I said, this phase of that bridge that you previously have seen was proposed at $250,000, and the design after the services after bidding were another $106,000. So the total for that concept would have been $360 after the $52 that we already spent.
So it would have been more than this and what we're actually being quoted?
Yes, it was, but I'm estimating phase 3, which was services during construction, and I have not requested those numbers from the design consultant yet.
Let me hear from the representative, please. Good afternoon. Walt.
Good afternoon. Congratulations on your promotion to chair. My name is Gerald Parrott. I am the Director of Building Service Group for ECF Engineering Consultants. I'd like to, not to contradict, but to go over the fact pattern a little bit. When we were working with phase 1, we were issued some directives from the previous port engineering staff. And the previous port engineering staff did a pretty good job of laying out their vision and direction for what they wanted the new port, the new cruise terminal loading passenger bridge to be. Subsequently, we submitted that phase 1 of that proposal. We presented to the board. The board approved that to go into phase 2. Phase 2 of that would have been the design of that new passenger loading bridge. We had a transition in port staff. The new staff came in, and the staff really felt like they needed to go in a different direction. It's cool. ECF is here to provide you guys' needs. With that being said, I don't think it's quite the description of what the new idea is not quite being described right. It's partially a performance spec, and then it's partially regular construction document, release of construction documents that you would have with any other project that you've had around here. So the performance spec piece is relations to the actual gangway or the actual movable piece that will attach or lead you to the ship from the horizontal, from the new horizontal hallway. What needs to be considered in that pricing, and when we send our work order over to the port, there's a pricing structure breakdown of all of our manpower estimates, of all of the parties that we assume to be participating in this activity, in addition to all of the consultants and all of the other work that we have to do to get background information so that the construction documents that we produce are viable documents. And like the commissioner said before, we don't lead to any change orders or lawsuits later. So I say all that to say that the new package that you guys are looking at, the performance spec piece still, if you look at the performance spec piece, we got to tell whoever we send it out to what that is that they're designing or what that is that they're building. So there's a design element in that within itself. Plus, in addition to that, we've had to, when we changed over from the original direction, bringing an architect and bringing some other consultants to help them design the horizontal piece before we were, in both renditions of the port bridge too, also consider there's technology involved in both of those that hadn't been used yet. So you'd be first time user of the old version, and then on this current version. So when you put a lot of that into consideration, you can see how we derived our numbers for the port. We think it's a fair price port given the scope of work that we were asked to do. At any time, we'd love to sit down and talk to the port and go over.
Mr. Pratt, that's my recommendation. You're hitting it right on the point. For our engineer to make a statement as strong to say, hey, they should be in the 7,500,000 range, and for us to have before us 227,000, that's a disconnect. So I think during this upcoming month, it's critical that you work with staff and you need to justify your numbers or modify them. And we're going to ask staff, of course, to give us that information as well, so that we can determine what is reasonable, what's the reasonable range. So we're going to bring this back next month, but Commissioner Enright.
You said something to me that was interesting. You said that you were doing one thing and then staff directed you to do something else, to change the modification. So it's like you were working in one ceremony is doing this, and all of a sudden now you had to change and go in another direction. Am I correct?
Well, first of all, we serve at the pleasure of the port and
Right,
port
so
staff,
we
so we'll go in any
changed it, so
direction.
that's-
But yes, that is essentially what
Okay.
happened.
So, would you please, does the board agree that this should be deferred until next month, and it should come back next month?
Okay. So we'll sit down with staff, we'll go over our numbers, and we'll go over the scope, and we'll see where we got to this.
Would you be on hand too? Would you be kind enough to be on hand with this project?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes, to everything. Yes. Thank you very much. Please, bring us back. Okay. Thank you. Mr. Parrott, thank you. Thank you. We're now on M1. Please, Mr.
LED retrofit project, main marginal high mast, approval of quote, DAFCO Electrical Contractors. DAFCO Electrical was awarded the Port of Palm Beach LED retrofit project under RFP in 2007 through the competitive bid process. This portion of the project focuses on a retrofit of 4 high mast poles in the main marginal area. Currently, these poles are using high pressure sodium bulbs that continue to fail, creating an unsafe working condition. Also, in addition, the current high pressure sodium poles lights that we're using, there's about 1,000 pounds of weight at the top of a 100-foot pole. And around these lights, a rim has been put around it to basically limit the light spillage that's coming out of the port. In this project, we're going to be reducing that 1,000 pounds to less than 200, maybe 120 pounds, and taking the weight and putting it to the bottom of the pole.
And what did you do about 4 or 5 years ago with high mast lighting? I recall
We were able to change a couple, and on the picture in there, you see one of them. The one that's circled is an LED pole, which basically, again, the spillage of light is reduced, and it lessens the impact on Palm Beach as well as Palm Beach shores. The light that they're seeing over there.
I'll make a motion to.
Yeah, there's 3 poles that have already been converted throughout the port, several that were knocked over.
I'll make a motion to approve the proposal.
A motion has been made and probably seconded. Any other written or questions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None, motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
M2 is full.
M2 poll M3, please.
Commissioners, good afternoon. Carl Baker, Director of Planning. There's been quite a bit of talk about port resiliency earlier in the meeting. One of the things you have to have before you can engage in a port resiliency program is you've got to know what you have and where it is, what condition it is. And a geographic information system is a software package that allows you to keep track of everything that's out there. This is not something that's just for engineering. It's not just for maintenance. It's for the department in here. Business development can use it to determine where all the plots are, so when you're trying to get a new tenant in here, you know exactly how much land is in that space, and it's easily something that you can call up on an iPad while you talk to them. Security can use it to keep track of cameras, all of their techno toys. You can use it for Esri, that is the same company that our CCNA engineering firms use when they use GIS. So it's a straight drop-in
I
plug-in.
guess I have a question. Are we getting this money from Ken or where? Where's the money coming from? To pay for this? And how much is it?
Okay, what we're asking for is to get this started. This is to get it started. It's a total of $24,500. The actual software is $9,800.
Okay.
And then the remainder is training, and that would be for the port engineer and myself.
Why Casey is still here though? This is the upgrade Casey?
No, this is not an upgrade to Casey.
So,
Second.
Just out of curiosity, I just wanted to verify the annual
$9,800. There's, you can add packages and licenses to this and grow it into something grand and run New York City with it. But obviously, we're not going to that level. But right now, we're looking at approximately $9,800 a year for the software licenses and renewals.
Anything else? Commissioners? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. We're now on item 5, change order number 3 to MOB.
Okay, this item is requesting a motion to approve change order number 3 on the MOB project and car yard conversion to West Construction. The background is Tropical Shipping requires reefer outlet installation to fully utilize the Carnegie Yard conversion project that's being completed by West. This change order incorporates time extensions to the contract resulting from delays by FPL in the removal of overhead power lines. This also includes preservation of West Construction completion days incurred to date, which will result in early completion of the original work with a contract stipulated bonus of $1,000 a day for each day of early completion. This change order provides for the definition of a phase 1 being the original contract work that is required to start Tropical's lease of the facilities. We expect a CO in the next couple of weeks. Phase 2 will incorporate the addition of reefer outlets with a separate completion date. Completion of phase with a separate completion date. Completion of phase 1 will comply with the agreements with Tropical Shipping and provide for a start date of their lease. Phase 2 will incorporate the time necessary to add the reefer outlets, which will be paid for primarily by Tropical Shipping.
Do you have the schematic or something you put up?
No, I do not. But what this is we added through change order and West contract additional conduits throughout this area at the request of Tropical. This is for Tropical selected contractor to act as a subcontractor to West.
For the additional conduits?
The additional conduits were approximately $136,000. And there's an agreement with Tropical for them to pay a portion of it.
Correct.
Okay, what portion? Half? 8%?
All.
Go ahead. The contract with Tropical says that any change order at their request, the amount of money that the port has to lay in a pocket to cover.
So good, so 136 of this, we get back from Tropical.
136 of it is in addition to this, which Tropical's already
In
covered.
addition to this.
Which Tropical's already covered.
Well,
This is a contractor selected by Tropical.
I'm trying to understand the 443. It'd be nice if I had,
Breakdown.
Yeah, I'm along.
The 443 is for installation of the electrical outlets, the wiring, the control panels, etc., to utilize the conduits and make this an operational reefer outlet facility of refrigerated.
And these items were not included in the original contract?
Excuse me?
Were these items included in the original agreement?
No, they were not. These are being added after, and they were not added at the time of the change order to add the conduits for Tropical.
Yeah, Greg, I'm clear.
yeah, when we started the project, what was our estimate? What was it gonna cost us, and what's it gonna cost us with this 443?
Maybe suggest, I'll have our Paul
Okay.
provide you with all the breakdown. There is a breakdown by granted, we should have.
Yeah.
When the original specs were designed, was to include a conduit to go down the line between the reefers. That was neglected to be put in by Tropical when we approved the agreement. Finding it out afterwards, we considered it a change order. And it was $136,000 to put that conduit in, roughly $30,000 to design it. It's covered by the cost of the project. FDOT will give us half, because it was a change order, and Tropical is paying that half. But half of the 136 and 30 they're paying for. The rest of it, now that the conduit is in, they need to put the wires in and the plugs.
These are reefer plugs?
Reefer plugs.
So did we not have reefer plugs in the reefer
No,
project?
it was not supposed to be included in it. Originally, Tropical was just to get the wire, put the conduit in, and they were to provide the wiring and the plugs. We are putting the wiring and the plugs in as no part of the project now, and because it's a change order requested again by Tropical, contract says they pay for anything we lay out. So, and again, half of what it's causing is going to FDOT, the other half comes from Tropical.
The half of the 136 plus 30 or the half of the?
Both. Both.
Both.
Yes.
That's great.
It's a little bit.
It's not anything, it's not 443.
Okay, well,
Yeah,
Commissioner
the-
Anderson.
You know, just can you just forward that information to us?
Be glad to do
All right.
it. They paid for it half of it.
All right.
Make a motion to approve it.
Second.
A motion has been made and seconded to approve item 5. Any further questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. M6.
The next item, M6, is requesting approval of a change order to West Construction. In an area north of the MOB, there was a portion that is included in the original layout of the MOB, but is not part of the area leased to Tropical. That area we requested to have paving completed in the area. It had areas of islands and grassy strips. Requested originally a proposal from West to pave that, and at that time they did not have paving going on, and the proposal was approximately $77,000. Now that they have paving going on, they have come back to us and they've agreed to do that work for $38,000. It is a 50-50 cost share with MDOT.
Make a motion to approve.
A motion has been made and seconded to approve M6. Any questions or readiness? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Appreciate it. Do we have any cards? JPA. Yes. Mr. Baker.
Good evening, sir. We have received a PTJA, otherwise known as JPA in the previous line, from FDOT for $1,250,000. This will be used to complete the construction on Berth 1. If you remember back in February, I appeared before the board, and when the FDOT actually gave us the money to do the Berth 1 project, we were initially supposed to get $6 million. By the time it actually came to them to write the check, they only had about $4.5 million that they could give us. But to sweeten the pot, and they realized they had kind of stuck it to us, they changed the grant from 50-50 to 75-25. And this is to cover that remainder.
So moved.
Second.
A motion has been made and seconded to approve M7. Any readiness or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None, motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
All right. Do you have any comments on H? Oh, okay. That's before. Any comments from the public? I don't have any cards here. Hearing no one standing up, we'll move on from comments from the public, comments from the board.
I just want to say, Happy New Year to everyone, and congratulations, Commissioners, while you were here, and we're looking forward to one for you, and staff has done an outstanding job, especially the ladies and all their new added, additions. I know you all got a little tighter to it, but gosh, you're doing the same work, but that you're doing double, triple, so I just say you all are doing an outstanding job, and I commend all of you. Thank you.
Happy New Year and congratulations, Chair. Just want to thank all of the staff for their hard work, especially during the MLK event. To Rick, Ken, Yarime, and Lawrence, thank you for directing traffic and being there, and as we just show up as non-participants. But thank you for all the work that you do, and you continue to do in the near future. Thank you.
Mr. Walton.
Yes, congratulations. And Happy New Year to everybody. Thanks.
I just want to thank Catherine for doing a great job last year. She stepped up and kept everything moving along, and I appreciate that. And I'm sure Wayne has done this before. Yeah, first. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to this year.
Thank you. And Mr. Walden, I thank you as well, because I know that when I step down, when my year is up, I can breathe. You can breathe. You can be a normal commissioner. But as a chairperson, you're always on alert. You have to be awake. You have to be on top of everything. So thank you for your efforts. All right. I'm told that we need to schedule an attorney-client session for the next meeting at 4 o'clock. Understand this? Does 3:30 work, or let's keep it at 4?
It's the 20th of February.
That's February the 20th, right? Yeah, we can keep it at 4.
Keep it at 4? Okay. So we're calling for an attorney-client session, I think. Speaking, do you need to say the proper wording, or does attorney-client at 4 o'clock?
We can, well, it will, Mr. Pickens, Mr. Bignell, and Rob Wilkins will be in attendance. And we are formally requesting advice concerning the litigation, so I'm supposed to say that at a public meeting.
Okay, absolutely. So our next meeting is on February 20th. Is everybody okay with that? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you.